Despicable propaganda. Cameron condemns the latest Islamic State murder video. Intelligence agencies are desperately trying to identify the British-sounding masked man in the footage. And ITV News has been told the young boy in the video is the son of a jihadi bride from London who's joined IS.
It's desperate stuff from an organisation that really does do the most utterly despicable and ghastly acts.
Also tonight, strikes by junior doctors in England are back on.
The historic castle teetering on the brinks of collapse in Scotland's floods. And
us kids eat and drink a whopping 5,543 sugar cubes.
A new device that reveals the truth about exactly how much sugar our children are consuming.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. David Cameron has described as desperate stuff the latest murder video put out by so-called Islamic State. In it, a British-sounding masked man taunts the Prime Minister and threatens attacks on the UK. It also features a young boy who a London minicab driver believes is his grandson.
He told ITV News his daughter took the child to Syria when she joined IS as a jihadi bride. Security services are working to identify the gunman who's shown taking part in the murder of 5 men accused of spying for the UK. Our security editor, Rohit Katru, has the latest.
Do you really think your government will care about you?
2 months since Mohammed Mwazi was killed, IS has a new British propagandist.
This is a message to David Cameron.
Threatening the Prime Minister in this propaganda video.
Well, it's desperate stuff from an organisation that really does do the most utterly despicable and ghastly acts, and people can see that again today.
But even by its standards, this image might be considered heinous. A young English boy, his hair tied in the black and white of IS.
Over there.
We will kill non-believers over there, he says. Tonight we can reveal that the boy is from south-east London. His mother, Grace Starr, travelled to Syria 2 years ago.
They let me down.
Tonight her father said he was heartbroken.
Totally disappointed. Totally disappointed. He's a kid, he's a minor, he's under 5. He's acting under the influence of the IS leaders.
A team of British intelligence officers is now trying to identify the masked man. They're working on a short list of potential suspects using low-tech methods, sifting through social media profiles. But they're likely to also use image analysis of his eyes, and the landscape in the video will be studied. But one former MI6 director says the masked man's importance shouldn't be overstated.
And rather like Jihadi John, who was a useful idiot but entirely dispensable, I think his utility to Islamic State is limited to this propaganda role.
But his is an organisation built on propaganda. His role now might be to encourage others to make the same journey to Syria that he did.
So, Rohit, how close are the intelligence services, do you think, to identifying this man?
Well, it won't take long, Mark. There are around 800 British jihadists in Syria and Iraq, and the work already done to identify Mohammed Mwazi, so-called Jihadi John, will be used to help accelerate the process of unmasking this man. One question, though, is whether this really matters in the greater war against IS. This is an organisation that's on the back foot, but only just. It's being ground down, but not swept away, despite months and months of aerial bombardments. This will be a very small propaganda victory, but this is a war in which such victories really do count.
All right, Rohit, thank you very much.
Now, they are one of the pillars of the NHS, but junior doctors across England are to go on strike next week. The British Medical Association said after the breakdown of talks with the government over a new contract, its members will provide emergency care only on the 12th of January. And as our health editor Rachel Younger reports, this could be followed by more strike action.
You may have thought all this was over after doctors swallowed their anger at the 11th hour last month and went back to the negotiating table rather than strike as planned. But the season of goodwill is well and truly behind us. What lies ahead now are 3 days of industrial action.
The government haven't really addressed any of our issues and haven't come to an agreement with us as the junior doctors. It's very disappointing to start the new year coming into 2016 in January, whereby the NHS is suffering, a hefty burden of patients given the winter months, and for doctors to be striking.
That first 24-hour walkout will begin at 8 a.m. next Tuesday, the 12th of January, with emergency care only on offer. Unless some progress is made, that will be followed by a second 48-hour strike on Tuesday, the 26th of January, again with only emergency care. And then a third day of action on Wednesday, the 10th of February, when junior doctors will withdraw their labour entirely between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m.
Hello, Rosemary. My name's Jenna. I'm one of the doctors here.
The NHS will be hard hit because 98% of junior doctors back action against what they say are unfair, unsafe changes to pay and conditions. The government insists change is needed to make sure the NHS can offer a 7-day service. But right now, 7 days is all hospitals have to prepare for the strike.
OK, so Rachel, what are the Department of Health saying about this?
Well, we've been hearing from Jeremy Hunt, the Secretary of State for Health, in the past hour. As you would expect, he said he's extremely disappointed. In fact, in the past few moments, he's given us a little bit more detail.
Well, it's a very disappointing outcome today because we had 16 areas of disagreement and we think we found a solution on 15 of the 16. The one area that wasn't resolved was pay for unsocial hours, which we were prepared to negotiate on. But instead of negotiating, the BMA have chosen to walk out of the talks and call industrial action.
All right, so that's what he's saying. But what does it actually mean for patients?
Well, the Department of Health is hoping to reconvene talks with ACAS and actually get the junior doctors back to the table. The problem is hospitals have now got 7 days to prepare for the strike, and they will have to do that. That means patients will see routine clinics and operations being cancelled. And as we saw in December, even if at the 11th hour they manage to get the strike averted, that disruption will still occur for patients at what is obviously one of the busiest times of the year for the NHS.
OK, Rachel Younger, thank you.
An historic castle close to the Queen's Balmoral estate in Scotland is tonight dangerously close to collapsing into a river swollen by the floods. Part of the building is already overhanging the bank that's been badly eroded by the raging water. Continuing heavy rain is threatening more flooding right across north-east Scotland.
Well, in the north of England, the flood risk is receding, but now comes the daunting prospect of the clean-up, and we will have the latest from West Yorkshire in just a moment. But first, let's go to Ben Chapman, close to that castle in Aberdeenshire. Ben.
As the rain continues to fall here and the river continues to rage, officials concede the situation here is precarious as this Grade A listed castle now stands dangerously close to this river. And all the while, the waters continue steadily to erode its foundations. Abergeldy Castle has stood for more than 400 years, but 21st century weather is close to bringing it down. Its occupants fled on Sunday after finding the River Dee at their back door. Since these pictures were filmed just a few days ago, the waters have continued to eat away at the bank. Michael and Pauline Tatham were themselves flooded last week. Their landlord is the man who owns the castle.
It's just an absolutely disaster for the poor man, but the river has taken out the banking, it's undercut the foundations, and the chances are it's going to fall into the river, and part of his heritage is just going to go.
In the waters below, you can still see the remnants of the trees that used to line this bank. Not long ago, there were 25 metres between the castle and the edge. The force of the river has reduced that now to just a few precarious feet. The incessant rain and rising waters continue to cause problems across Scotland. In nearby Ballater, basement properties had to be pumped out again, with dozens more homes evacuated tonight in Aberdeenshire and Perthshire.
We do have more surface water issues now, which are causing a number of road closures and some flooding in Aboyne and further down Deeside. That's causing us to evacuate some properties, and we have some properties which are flooding still as well.
Down the east coast, wind and waves battered defences. More than 48 hours of constant, often heavy rain has caused problems for drains and drivers and is threatening train lines.
I've seen the river overflow its banks before, but nothing like this. I've never seen persistent rain like this before. So
the rain's supposed to carry on for the next few days, so it's only going to get worse.
That rain will get lighter tomorrow, but still merits a yellow weather warning as the clean-up from last week's flooding goes on. And though river levels here are now falling, the weather's most high-profile casualty may still be yet to come. Ben Chapman, ITV News, Aberdeenshire.
Well, for many businesses across the flood-hit north of England, there was no back to work after the Christmas and New Year break today. As Damon Green reports from Mytholmroyd in West Yorkshire, there's only one priority now: the battle to clean up after the deluge.
The damage was done in just a few hours when the River Calder burst its banks on Boxing Day. But after 9 solid days of clearing up, the mess is just as daunting as ever. Carol's pub was flooded. She lost all the beer, all the food, all the furniture, and because of a mix-up over her policy, now finds she wasn't insured against flooding. She only copes, she says, because she has to.
You have to be strong.
And how easy is that?
It's not easy. Behind closed doors, I'm not strong.
But you keep going?
Yeah. You have to, yeah.
Torrential rain on Christmas night caused the river to rise several metres in just a few hours. Mytholmroyd has seen flooding before, but few can remember anything on this scale. Today, on the day much of Britain went back to work, employees of this town's largest business just carried on, emptying their warehouse of flood-damaged stock. They've been working solidly since Boxing Day. A stock take tomorrow will decide if their jobs are safe.
Heartbreaking. They're very heartbreaking, you know. So the most important, you have to show yourself positive to the stuff, because if you look negative, you upset a lot of stuff, because a lot of stuff worrying about that positions.
The people and businesses of Mytholmroyd are doing their best to pull together. This premises has been converted into a flood relief centre.
And tea? Yeah.
A place where local volunteers can meet and be fed before heading out to another clean-up job. Jo's given her time despite her own catering business being shut by the floods.
I've been 6 days in the kitchen, and I walked into the kitchen thinking everybody had known and worked in that kitchen and were employees of that company in the kitchen. No, everybody had just met for the first time. They got in, we didn't know what ingredients we were having, they didn't know what we'd be cooking. We've been putting out 500-600 meals a day.
All told, the damage will run into millions. Everything in this furniture showroom is ruined, though its manager insists it'll continue to trade online and to find clean second-hand furniture for those flooded out. The people of Mytholmroyd have so much work ahead to set their town on its feet, but it seems that together they're determined to do it. Damon Green, ITV News, in West Yorkshire.
Denmark is the latest European country to announce it's tightening border controls to try to restrict the influx of migrants. Danish police will carry out border spot checks for the next 10 days. It comes hours after Sweden introduced checks for all passengers travelling by train, bus or ferry from Denmark. The two countries are the latest members of Europe's open border agreement to impose controls.
There's much tension tonight on Jeremy Corbyn's office, where the Labour leader is said to be putting the finishing touches to a shadow cabinet reshuffle. There's intense speculation about the future of senior figures who disagree with him on key issues like Trident and the bombing in Syria. Our political correspondent Carl Dinnan is in Westminster this evening. Carl, what are you hearing?
Well, the very latest is that the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Hilary Benn, is right now in a meeting with Jeremy Corbyn in his Commons office. That means the reshuffle is underway and Jeremy Corbyn is starting right at the top of his team. The Labour leader himself has been out and about today, but wouldn't reply to any questions about his reshuffle. This reshuffle has been dubbed the revenge reshuffle, in fact, because it's thought that ministers who disagree with Mr Corbyn were going to be demoted. Hilary Benn, chief amongst them, because he supported bombing in Syria when Mr Corbyn did not, but also Maria Eagle, Shadow Defence Secretary, who has made her support of the Trident nuclear weapons system very clear when Mr Corbyn would like to get rid of it. Mr Corbyn's ally, Ken Livingstone, has made it clear that he thinks Hilary Benn should be moved.
What came over in the debate about Syria, though, is it looks rather ridiculous if the leader of the party opens the debate with one line and the shadow foreign secretary closes it with a completely alternative one. If Hilary Benn had been Environment Secretary, it wouldn't have been a big issue. Instead, we had 2 days of, is there a big Labour split, is this a coming leadership challenge, a load of old rubbish, rather than focusing on the issue of Syria.
Now, earlier, sources close to Mr Benn suggested to me that he would not be willing to be moved from his post as Shadow Foreign Secretary. So what happens here over the coming hours into tomorrow, perhaps, will determine whether over the rest of this year Labour can begin to heal its divisions or whether they just get worse.
All right, Carl, keep your ear to the ground. Thanks very much indeed.
The suspended Labour MP Simon Danczuk vowed today he would not resign over suggestive text messages he sent to a 17-year-old girl.
He told ITV News he made mistakes for which he has apologised, but now wants to get on with the job of representing Rochdale. Our political correspondent Libby Wiener has been speaking to him.
Come out and meet the people of Rochdale who you're supposed to represent.
Protests outside his office in Rochdale. But the MP who made his name, highlighting the abuse of children, was today insisting there was no reason for him to quit over sending sexually explicit text messages to a 17-year-old. It was wrong, he said, but not illegal, and not a sign he couldn't do his job.
Why not someone your own age? Why pick on someone who wasn't actually an adult in law?
Well, I didn't pick on them actually. They came and found me. But listen, I'm not going to try and shy away from the fact that I believe it was inappropriate. I should have been much more professional. That's why I apologised for what I've done.
Did you not think it was more than inappropriate? I mean, you were a good deal older than her. You were in a position of authority. Do you not think that you are guilty of some kind of child abuse?
Oh, certainly not. I think it would be ridiculous to suggest what I've been involved in here equates to anything near what I've been campaigning on in terms of child sexual abuse. That is criminality at its worst, and I have come nowhere near to what you were describing.
It was Simon Danczuk who helped expose child abuse allegations against his predecessor in Rochdale, Cyril Smith. But in the town today, there was little sympathy for the MP.
He has apologised today, but I don't think it's enough. I think he should resign, definitely.
You want him to stand down?
Yeah, he should stand down.
Obviously, it does take two. She was obviously involved as well, but he should have been the mature, obviously adult that he's meant to be and stayed away completely.
He's apologised, he's admitted it was inappropriate. Is that enough?
No, he should be hoisted out of office ASAP.
Whatever his fate, in a town where child abuse has cast such a long shadow, many feel this scandal is the last thing they need or deserve. Libby Wiener, ITV News, Rochdale.
The White House tonight called for restraint in the growing international row over Saudi Arabia's execution of a prominent Shia cleric. The execution has opened up a bitter diplomatic split between the Desert Kingdom and Iran, where supporters of the cleric attacked the Saudi embassy. Let's get the latest from our international affairs editor, Raghi Omar.
Even as relations with Saudi Arabia were reaching an unprecedented low, Iran continued to hold demonstrations in support of the cleric Sheikh Nimr, and the crowd shouted death to the Saudi authorities who executed him on Saturday. Although Sheikh Nimr al-Nimr was a Saudi citizen, like most Iranians, he was a Shia Muslim. And the fact that he met his death at the hands of Saudi Arabia, a puritanical Sunni Muslim regime, is what's given his case such international dimensions. Reacting to Saudi Arabia severing all diplomatic and commercial links, Iran's foreign ministry spokesman said Saudi Arabia's reaction showed it was only interested in worsening the region's instability and insecurity. It's a centuries-old schism, putting Sunni Saudi Arabia at odds with Shia Iran, an ancient disagreement over the rightful heir to the Prophet Muhammad, but it plays a part in virtually every Middle East conflict today. In Syria, President Bashar al-Assad is Shia, whilst most of the rebels fighting him are Sunni. Iraq is still torn between the Sunnis who once ruled under Saddam Hussein and today's Shia-led government, and the civil war in Yemen is between Shia rebels and a Sunni government. Many believe that the biggest losers in all this will be those countries caught in the middle of Iran and Saudi Arabia's proxy wars.
Countries like Syria and Iraq and Yemen, where there are domestic dynamics that are separate from the disagreements between Saudi Arabia and Iran. However, they're being used by different sides, especially in terms of the religious sectarianism that is harming all these countries in the region.
It's countries like Iraq where the fallout from this sectarian rivalry is being seen. A Sunni mosque was bombed by Shia militias and the Saudi embassy in Baghdad was nearly stormed. Stopping all this from escalating will be easier said than done. Ragioma, ITV News.
Here, shares have tumbled on the first day of trading in the new year, with the FTSE 100 index of leading shares slumping 2.4%, the biggest fall at the start of a year since 2000. It comes after trading on China's stock markets were halted after shares dropped 7% amid unease about the Chinese economy.
Train services across Wales were disrupted today as drivers went on strike over pay and conditions. Members of ASLEF at Arriva Trains Wales have walked out for 24 hours.
And 3 people have been arrested after thieves stole money from a village cash machine by blowing it up. The explosion at a post office in Long Ashton near Bristol blew out the front of the shop, leaving it in virtual ruins.
And finally, it is a really shocking thought, but it's revealed today that some young children are now consuming the equivalent of their own body weight in sugar every year.
Yes, it's prompted Public Health England to launch a major campaign about the dangers of too much sugar, complete with a new phone app to help parents. Rebecca Barry has more.
Over a year, us kids eat and drink a whopping 5,543 sugar cubes. That's 22 bags of sugar. That's more than a kid like me weighs. And I'm 5.
It's meant to be shocking, a new campaign to urge parents to take control of the amount of sugar their child consumes.
Well, it's about leading by example. So it's about getting out there, finding out about how much sugar is in the foods and drinks that you're eating every day, looking to cut back. So the next time that you're making a choice about what kind of breakfast cereal you're going to eat, find out how much sugar is in the breakfast cereal that you're already having. And I can pretty much guess it's probably going to be quite a lot.
Children aged 4 to 6 should have a maximum of 5 sugar cubes a day. But new figures show the average child eats 3 times that, around 22 kilos a year, the equivalent weight of a 5-year-old. Meanwhile, almost half of 8-year-olds have tooth decay and a third of 10-year-olds are overweight or obese. That's why parents are being encouraged to download a new app which reveals the amount of sugar in the food and drink they give their children. So if you scan the barcode on this carton of juice, it tells you it contains more than 9 cubes of sugar. So what do mums and dads think?
6.4 grams. I was really quite surprised, especially when it's something that you perceive as healthy, like yoghurt, and then you look at the actual sugar content, and that's quite frightening.
When you're trying to negotiate with a 3-year-old as to what is and isn't acceptable, it's quite easy to give in if you're unsure.
But supermarkets say the government should bring in new laws to cut sugar content.
We want to play our part, but we're also realistic about it. We'll only achieve the big wins if everybody, from the big brands to the supermarkets to the food outlets, are all covered by the same rules.
14.4 sugar cubes. Wow.
That's a bigger number.
The government's set to reveal its new strategy on childhood obesity soon. Until then, it's hoped education will help. Rebecca Barry, ITV News.
Well, for a guide on how that smartphone app works, go to our website, itv.com/news.
And that is it for now. Tom Bradby is here at 10:30 tonight after a special programme in which Ant and Dec meet Prince Charles to celebrate 40 years of the Prince's Trust.
But from all the team here, in the meantime, have a very good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.